Welcome to Phillips Mill Art Talk. I'm Laura Womack, and with me is Technical Director Jen McHugh.
Hi, everyone.
Jean Mihitch is our producer, and Mary Flamer is this month's guest producer. And tonight we're welcoming James Dupree, whose work is filled with color. For James, color is personal. His art treads the line between politics, culture, and fine art. The intentionality behind his work is supported by the intersection of his expression of color, form, and technique. And we're going to talk about all of that. James Dupree holds a BFA from the Columbus College of Art and Design, an MFA from the University of Pennsylvania. In addition, he's attended the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art and Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture in Maine. He's taught at Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art, the University of Pennsylvania, and Crewe and Alsager College in England. James Dupree owns and operates two contemporary fine art galleries, one in Lambertville and one in Philadelphia. His work is in the collections of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the LA African American Museum, the Schomburg Center in New York City, PAFA, and Patti LaBelle. James Dupree, welcome to Art Talk.
Charlottenborg Museum in Copenhagen, Denmark. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, James, and welcome to everybody in the audience. Thank you so much for joining us. We'd love for you to join us with your questions. Please put them in the Q&A where we can find them easily. And James, let's get going right away. Jen has a slideshow that the two of you put together, and we're going to look at your work. Tell us, if you would, about Theme 5, Part 1.
This is part of my University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Fine Arts 1977 thesis show. It was 5 pieces where I was dealing with abstract painting, lyrical abstraction, where the paint is the physical paint creates the sound of movement, and for me, music at the time. I was relating music to abstraction, lyrical abstraction specifically. And when I use the term, for me, lyrical abstractions, the physical properties of the paint or actually the painting. This piece won the Earth Art 3 exhibition in 1979 at the Philadelphia Art Museum. Won first prize, selected by Anne Donencourt, and my first piece that went into the Philadelphia's permanent collection.
It has so much energy and life, James, and you're known for your color. Tell us about your color theory.
Well, color to me is cultural, and I never thought about it when I was young and painting. I just like to use bright colors or chromatic color more specifically. And with that, I related to how I dress, how I saw people in my community dress. And then I really started to understand that as I traveled around the country and around the world. And in the Black community specifically, it was no big thing to see somebody in a red suit with a red pair of shoes on and a red hat, driving a red Cadillac, so I didn't think about it at the time. And I finally realized that when I lived in Europe and living in England for a year and painting in that light. That light is gray, it's damp, it's dreary, versus painting in Oaxaca, Mexico, or Thailand, or Africa. So I always was able to defend myself and my work when questioned. I was once told by a critic that they hated my garish colors and the artificial light that they were seeing in my paintings. And I replied to that person that I hated their anatomically incorrect figures. And the fact that they hated my work is because they had never seen it before.
Well, that's a pretty strong reaction for somebody to tell you that they hated your garish colors.
Well, I'm the 17th African American to graduate from the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Fine Arts, and that might have something to do with it.
So when you say color is cultural, do you mean which colors you choose or the fact that you choose a lot of color, or both?
Yeah, both. Well, here's a perfect example. Go to any warm climate and view the art. As you travel the world, those warm climates have a tendency to work in pure colors. Like, for example, I just spent 9 months a few years ago in Oaxaca, Mexico. And I was just thrilled when the top Mexican artists got to come and visit my studio, and they were speechless. The painting behind me was done in Oaxaca, Mexico, on my right-hand side, directly behind me. And you have to, as an, I don't want to just say as an African-American artist, getting outside of American culture, you have to get and see art around the world to understand how you fit as an African-American in the world. And the work is, at least my work, when I had an exhibition in Brazil, in Bahia, I think there was 15 reviews about my work specifically, even though I was in a group of 10, 12 artists. And it was because the color, my palette resonated with the art in Brazil.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, we're going to explore more about that, but we are getting questions. We love it when members of the audience ask questions. This is your opportunity as well to talk with James Dupree. Jen, what questions do we have?
Okay, we have a question from John. He said, would you please explain your term lyrical abstraction a bit more?
Well, there's a term, abstract expressionism. And that was formed, I think, in the 50s. My art history is my art history based on my experiences and not book read history. Because you have to understand, in America, there's several histories. Now, mainstream history in America is Eurocentric. So for years, when I started thinking of the word lyrical abstraction, that came out of a guy by the name of James Harvard, who formed that term here in Philadelphia, where he's putting down a brushstroke and then creating an abstracted brushstroke of color, and then creating a shadow so that that color looked like, or that forming a shape looked like it was floating in a surface. And he called that lyrical abstraction. And that's where I got that term from, is James Harvard. So stole it from James Harvard, let's be honest. And it related to what I was trying to do. So I actually I was influenced by his work and started creating lyrical abstraction based on his artwork and floating objects of paint, the physical property of the paint becoming the painting or the image. And I removed the shadow. And I called my lyrical abstraction because it related to me through the sound of music, jazz specifically. And when I thought about jazz music as the great art form for African Americans, who left America and became famous in Europe, that's what I wanted to happen for my paintings. And 77, 76, 75 is when I started painting those paintings. And then I associated the painting with synesthesia, where you hear sound and see color, or see color and hear sound. My hobby is music. I'm a great musician until the real musicians show up.
You talk about throwing sound at the canvas,
Throwing
James.
sound at the canvas. Somebody else wrote that about my work when I had a show at the Kimmel Center. Kimmel Center had a small gallery that they were trying to start, and I was actually the first artist in that gallery. And synesthesia was brought to my attention as it related to that painting specifically, because we borrowed it back from the Philadelphia Art Museum. And so fusion was where I was trying to combine lyrical abstraction with a series I called Stolen Dreams and Forbidden Fruit, where I was trying to get the color to float and emerge out of a spiral. And the spirals that I started using was influenced by a great friend of mine and a great artist that took me under his wing, Al Loving. So there's a whole series prior to the Stolen Dreams Forbidden Fruit series, which was after the lyrical abstraction work, influenced by Al Loving. So
Okay.
it's a lot. Again, there's another history. Most people have no clue who Al Loving was or is, but he was a major influence in abstract paintings that where he wanted to fuse the surface where there was no figure ground relationship. So he was trying to remove perspective out of his paintings. His paintings were flat. So he came out of that whole school of abstract expressionism, and then cultivated a style that was specifically his. And so Al Loving, Howard Dina Pendell, William T. Williams were the first major three artists that broke into the uptown galleries, African-American artists that broke into the uptown galleries in New York in the 70s.
All right, good. Well, I appreciate that context and the history lesson. I want to come back to that. We do have some questions in the Q&A though. Jen, help me out with those, please.
Sure. Frank said your work is very intricate. How do you start a painting?
Oh, my work is probably like my personality, schizophrenic, dense, lyrical in a way that most people don't understand what I'm talking about. A lot of times I'm talking all over their head, sometimes a little bit too sarcastic. I usually get that way when somebody has offended me, and I rather laugh about it than be angry. So because of my background, because of my history, because of my life, which is so schizophrenic, I used to tell people, I hate walking around in the skin that I'm in with this brain. I always felt the skin color didn't allow me or afford me the awards that I thought I should have had. But so the density comes from a very poor background, fighting my way to become educated, fighting my way not to go and fight as an 18 to 26-year-old. I was opposed to the Vietnam War, and I think we've forgotten that. A lot of people have forgotten how insane the Vietnam War was for a kid like me, who you don't realize how many parents don't want their sons and daughters to become artists. The first thing that they'll tell you is that you're never going to make any money.
Yeah.
I don't know how you're going to live. And you need to stop thinking about that crazy stuff. And when are you going to get a real job? So
I think a lot of artists hear that. Yeah.
So it took me a while to understand. Most parents don't want their sons and daughters to become artists unless they're trust fund kids. And I had to convince. I taught at the University of Virginia, and I really thought I did a great job and should have got a full position there. I had 5 parents come visit me, and the most outstanding one was Mr. and Mrs. Penley Chang. And they said, Professor Dupree, what have you done to my son Penley? He now wants to be this artist thing. And I said, Mrs. Chang, your son Penley has more talent in his little finger than I'll ever have in my entire life. He's the most outstanding student I ever taught. She says, well, you don't understand. Penley is also the leading student in cancer research. I said, but Miss Chang, he'll make all the money in the world and you'll be really happy, but he's really gonna hate you until he's made enough money where that is no longer important. And then he'll come find me and start painting all over again. So I explained to her my success without very little help, and just what would happen if he had her support.
Yeah.
Well, I convinced him enough where Penley went and majored in painting and went on to get a master's degree at Yale University. And I think he's teaching somewhere to this day.
That's fabulous. Well, James, let's take a look at some of your work and go back to what the inspiration is and how do you start? Because there's so much going on in your art. What is the beginning point? Here we are with your gallery.
That's a group exhibition. I'm also a dumpster diver member. So to answer the question, without getting into the political racial component of my life, I made a crucial decision because of, and I always put it this way, because of this beautiful permanent suntan that I have. I couldn't get into the best gallery in Philadelphia after I showed up. Meaning there was after I won the Earth Art 3 show in '79, a gallery in Philadelphia just loved my work until I showed up. So what happened with that moment, I decided only to make artwork that was related to my personal experiences. So there's 35 series or bodies of work since 1979. So the density that you see is probably the experiences I go through as a small, incredibly intelligent, handsome Black man. And then I always laugh. I laugh about everything, and people will say, I was in Mexico, and this guy said, why are you laughing? Senor, why are you laughing? I said, because to me, the world is funny. I'm tired of being angry.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to go back to the questions. Our guest producer has a question. Jen, can you give us, Mary has a request, Mary Flamer, our guest producer, has a request for slide number 7.
I'll get to that. And in the meantime, James, if you could answer her question, which was, what women artists have influenced you?
Women artists?
Women artists.
Oh, George O'Keeffe. The Mexican artist, Frida Kahlo. Who? Oh, of course, my favorite, Dr. Selma Burke. I always talk about Miss Selma, who became a personal friend. Talk about anger and not getting your dues. Probably everybody that's on this podcast has had or owned a Dr. Selma Burke at some point or another. African-American female who married a DuPont in 1945 from Bucks County. Did the relief.
And she did the dime. She was a sculptor and she modeled the Roosevelt dime. That's right.
That's right. So
Yeah.
I always, and then that gets back to my work of talking about in America, racism is subliminal. And even only 25 years ago, 20 years ago, you would say that, at least I would say, and people say, you don't know what you're talking about, James. There's no such thing as racism in America. Well, Dr. Selma Burke never got her dues. And so whenever I get mad, I think of Miss Selma, who supported me from the first time she saw my work, and several others like her. And so there's a name that is still not mainstream in America. And there's a guy by the name of Badir McClary, who just a few years ago got his master's degree at Sotheby's. And he's pointing out all these stories of, as I said earlier, there are two histories that exist in America. And America still hasn't caught up, and now they don't want to catch up. So I always tell people, just because your information is not my information doesn't make it right or wrong. And so there's this whole history. If you go through every culture, when I went to Korea, if you've never been to Korea and seen Korean art or studied Korean art, there are no better technical artists in the country than the Korean artists in terms of innovation, technique, style. I was just floored at Korean art when I went to Korea. I didn't like the Koreans. The Koreans didn't like me. I will never go back to Korea. I don't know how my daughter survived 6 years teaching at the oldest college in Korea, but that country's almost worse than America in terms of outsiders. But that artwork is off the charts. And so that's how I educated myself, by seeing as much art as I possibly could. And I would go and investigate techniques and styles and try to master them. The way I got through college, my last 2 years of college, I was a straight A student and the top student in my undergraduate school. And the reason and the way I did that is I didn't care who I was studying with. I wanted to know how, why, and what they did. And I would emulate it and copy it. And so I would have an understanding of who was teaching me and what it took for them to get to whatever level technically that they were doing.
That's a classic technique. Let's take a look at slide number 7, which Mary Flamer, our guest producer, requested. James, tell us about this work, please.
I have been painting Stolen Dreams, Forbidden Fruit for about 7 to 9 years. And it had about 7 to 8, 9 variations on that theme. And I came up with this idea when I was at the Studio Museum in Harlem that I was going to take a basic shape and create work around it using the worst composition, which is a vignetted shape placed in the center of your canvas. So I use that as a principle. I had a teacher say that to me once, and I wanted to know why. So it's really funny because I'm moving back to doing symmetrical work. So it started out my triangular series, then I went to the circles and the ovals, went to the circles, and from the circles to the ovals. And then I started seeing the ovals as musical notes moving across the surface, emerging from a vortex in the center of the painting. And then I used panels, those panels shifted like in a musical structure, moving up and down as the notes floated across. And then I used trompe l'oeil, so you couldn't tell if the ovals were painted or three-dimensional. So it created this optical illusion, except when you looked from the side. And what happened, this painting was seen by millions of people. If you look around Philadelphia today, there are several artists that were influenced by this painting that was at the Philadelphia airport, that was considered one of five of the top pieces in public airports across the United States by CNN. I think 2.2, 2.5 million people saw this painting in Philadelphia. It then went out to the PDX airport in Portland, Oregon for a year and a half. I almost sold this piece in Portland. It ended up in a commercial in Japan and a backdrop in China or vice versa. And then I took it down to Art Basel, where I was a featured artist at the Catalina Hotel, which was one of the first sites for Art Basel, which I was a featured artist and hung this in their lobby. Another 400, 500, 600,000 people saw it down there. And
It's a fabulous piece. Rhonda Garland, who's one of the gallerists in Bucks County, saw it at the airport and she says it was stunning.
thank you. I own this piece now. It's actually in my house, in my living room.
Nice. Lucky you. That's the advantage of
Yeah.
being an artist, right?
I don't have any
Okay.
desire
Yeah.
to sell it now.
It's marvelous. Jen, who's up next in our Q&A? We've got questions rolling in. We want to make sure we get to your questions. If you have some, join us in the Q&A.
Sure. Paula asked, what is the next painting technique that you have to try?
Oh, I'm actually making sculpture now. I'm actually making sculpture, but I'm working on 3 little series of different topics. One, I'm going back and redoing my dragonfly paintings I did in Oaxaca, Mexico, because they're marketable. And then the next one is Art is My Religion. And then I'm literally making sculptures, sketches for large scale sculpture.
Interesting. What's caused you to branch off into sculptures?
I've always done 3D pieces. Again, my background in fine arts is painting, drawing, printmaking, ceramics, and sculpture. So I'm from the old school where you had an idea and you were taught the various disciplines in fine art. So you could take that idea as large or as small as you wanted. So I mean, that stuff came later where you were just a painter, or you were just a sculptor, or I'm a performance artist, or I only do conceptual work. But I learned how to draw and paint first. I came out of illustration. I actually was an illustrator.
And James, you were drawing from the time you were born, practically, apparently drawing on your mother's walls. And so your second grade teacher said you were born to be an artist. I'm fascinated by the fact that you got your start also at Fleischer Art Memorial in Philadelphia, which of course is a wonderful organization that makes art education available to everyone. How strong an influence was Fleischer Art Memorial on you?
It's so funny because that's my first art school. And I always tell the story, you go to Saturday school classes and every week, and at the end of the class, the teacher would pick the best piece. And if he picked your work, you would get a box of chalk. And I wanted some chalk so bad. And so I was Fleischer, I think, from 4th grade to 7th grade. Or maybe it might be 3rd grade to 7th grade. So however old you are in excuse me, 5th grade, 5th, 4th grade. I don't know how old you are, but I was there till I was 13. So at 13, that's 1963. So roughly 1957, 58 to 1963. And that was the best time of my life, but my life was going to Saturday school at Fleischer. And I actually grew up in the Hawthorne projects here in Philadelphia, 13th and Fitzwater, and went to the Hawthorne school. So that was the highlight of my week, was going to Fleischer Art Memorial. I never put it in my mind or dreamt that I would end up one day teaching there and being one of the first African-American male teachers to teach there, if not the first, within the top 5. And then I was there a long time. I always say, I don't know, between 15 and 20, 25 years, because I just live around the corner from it. And I had the good fortune of meeting Suzanne Roberts, who's the niece of Samuel Fleischer's. And so, yeah, it's great 360. I love this piece. Now,
Fabulous piece. Tell us about it.
this is Valley of the Gods. This is my journey from Philadelphia to Oaxaca, Mexico. I drove down and had hired a driver to meet me at the border and take me from the border to Oaxaca, so I didn't get what's the word when they snatch you?
Kidnapped.
Kidnapped. I laugh about it, but I actually got stopped by the Contras on the way back. So it's me going to Oaxaca, and in the center here is me going through the mountain, driving through the mountain, and then meeting the Mexican weavers and painters in all this color. So a warm palette versus this cool palette, African culture versus Mexican culture, the Aztecs, and all the stuff that's similar. And I had this crazy thing that I came up with, going and sitting out and meditating in front of cactus. And so I start these paintings out. If you look at them closely enough, they're all cactus. And then I call it deconstructing the cactus and find these shapes in the cactus. On the left-hand side, it's a little more dense than the right-hand side with the blues. But and then it's like me looking out at the viewer through a microscopic eye on the left-hand side. But that just happened. I don't know how that happened. I was thinking about looking at a microscope and at the same time a telescope. And
So you don't have a plan?
No, this was no sketches. This is me just sitting down with this big vine charcoal graphite drawing, and then laying color out in the shapes of cactus, and then breaking it down from there, except the center, of course. And then I did the self-portrait out of my mind, which that's how I do stuff. And so I like this little face looking inward on our left-hand side. And then you have these combination of African Mexican mask that's almost like a beard. And then you have this big silhouetted shape looking at another totally deconstructed face, but you can see the lips and then what looks like an eye. And then for some odd reason, a peacock appeared to me.
There's a lot of distinct regions and even some distinct styles going on. A lot happening in
Yeah,
this.
so the painting starts out as a fine charcoal, and then from that to acrylic paint. And then after I got the whole thing painted in acrylic paint, I flood it with oil paint and then do a reduction over top of the acrylic. And then I etch the surface. That's why I say my work is my work. And I etch
Your work is,
my work. It's not.
I hear that, yeah.
My work is my work. And then I start seeing things in there. I start seeing African things. I start seeing textures. I start seeing other paintings somewhere in the past. I meet somebody that day, all of a sudden I see their silhouette. That silhouette appears in the painting, either as an African mask or actually on the other side, a realistic face in blue.
So James, would you say it's stream of consciousness?
Yes, because it's in the moment and I'm totally isolated. I was there for 9 months. I didn't have any visitors. I didn't speak the language. I had a housekeeper, a driver, and a cook. So I got up, I had food, whatever I wanted to eat. If I worked all night, don't wake me until 2. And this is what I wanted to eat at 2 o'clock, bring it over to the little gallery. You know, so I was living that dream of escaping America, being totally isolated and not thinking about the insanity that happened in America. That's what makes this work unique. And whether I get the credit for it in my lifetime, if you look back on my career and what I've done as an artist, I think it's pretty exceptional, especially as an African-American artist, and especially as a Philadelphia artist.
I think no qualifications need apply, but James, I have to tell you, we have a ton of questions coming for you. So I want to be
I'll try to be
fair.
brief and answer the questions now.
You're doing a great job. I just, I want to let you know what the people want to talk to you. And so we're going to run through some of those questions, sir. Jen, help me out here, please.
Sure. First, we have Carol. She said, James, how do you vision your move to Bucks County and Lambertville in creating a new awareness in the region's history, in particular artists who live here now and in the past? Of course, somebody already mentioned Selma Burke, but who is here now?
Well, I talk a lot and I meet a lot of people because I'm a people person. As much as I don't think I am, or other people, I am. I'm a people person. So just 2 nights ago, I was incredibly late because I met a gentleman and his wife on the street who's a native from Lambertville. His whole entire life lived in Lambertville. And his story about Lambertville was just amazing to me. Not an artist, but the artists that I do know that are coming to me, I find quite pleasant, because there is a history here that, here meaning Lambertville, that is, to me, and I could be wrong, I have to do more research. I haven't even done research yet. 2 things that exist in Lambertville right now that I find fascinating. 1 is the history of the Quakers, and 2, the workers in Lambertville from, wait for it, Oaxaca, Mexico.
Yeah.
So most of the laborers in Lambertville that are Mexican are from Oaxaca. And I just find that out of all the places I could have ended up, just living in Oaxaca and how much I love Oaxaca, that's a whole new story. I don't think anybody's has investigated or talked about, at least as an art form. So what I have, we have just contacted the person at the library that I think put the Mexican Day there, and they had Oaxaca Festival last year. So I want to hook up with them, and then I have to really think about what I want to do. I know I'll be putting my work from Oaxaca up in my gallery during that time. And so as a history and as an art form, and talking about me coming to Lambertville is totally a new direction, because I can bring the Oaxacan artists to Lambertville for all those people that now live in Lambertville who happen to be from Oaxaca.
Fabulous.
So that is amazing to me, and that's what I'm going to do. On the other note, everybody knows I just juried that little show at, I want to, what mill was that? Paulsville. Is it Paulsville? Paulsville Mall. And that was just exciting for me. It wasn't a large show, it was an easy show for me to jury. And what I was going to do was to take 20 of those artists and put them in my gallery. I still might do it because there was a nice group of artists, but there are some really serious art being made and has been made historically there that, like, a lot of people don't know who Ray King is. Ray King is outside of Lambertville in that little town, what's it called, where we ate lunch.
Just to be clear, you're talking to Sierra there.
Yeah, I'm trying to get where the town that Ray King has 25 acres of land and probably the best studio you'll ever see in the world that he just built. His work is all over the world. Most people don't know Ray King's in the neighborhood. And then you have Diane Burko, who's from Philadelphia, who's been attacking global warming for 25 years, who shows all over the world, lives in Bucks County. So there's a history of artists as a community that I haven't even touched. And, there's a school of thought that I'm not from. So some people see my work as a breath of fresh air, and there's a group of people that may not like it at all. And that's cool too, but it's different in a way that what I teach, there's, the worst thing is no response. So be it positive or negative, I could care less, long as there is a reaction to that work. And I have got both positive and negative, because there is a style that has existed in this area for a very long time.
That's right.
That is not my interest. It's not that I can't paint that stuff. It's just that is not my interest now. Who knows? I'm planning on living to be at least 90 something, and maybe I just want to go out and do something.
James. Well, and that's why we're glad to hear you, because I think Phillips Mill is the home for some of that work, and we love it. But that doesn't mean it's the only thing that we want to look at. So, okay, well, let's go back to the questions, because again, we've got a bunch of them. Where are we, Jen?
Jill wants to know, would you ever incorporate your sculptures with your painting? There are so many areas in your paintings that seem to pop out and feel like they want to be alive.
Yes, I think that's what's going to happen with the sculpture. The sculptures or three-dimensional paintings to me, and vice versa. So the answer to that is yes, because I've always done mixed media stuff. And even like the new stuff, art is my religion, was found objects that are painted. So that's three-dimensional sculpture, three-dimensional paintings, depending on how you're looking at it.
Well. Go ahead, Jen. Or I
Yes,
can't. There you go.
John wants to ask, would you talk a bit about the painting over your left shoulder?
The Donald Trump piece?
I think the left shoulder is the one that's mostly black and white.
Yeah, that's the Donald Trump work.
Oh, there you go, the Donald Trump. Yep, sorry.
Yeah, so that's from my series. I really caused a little stir here in Philadelphia at my gallery. I painted my gallery black, glossy black walls, and all the artwork was white. And I called it White Art for Black His Story Month. White Art for Black His Story Month. So that ain't my story, it's his story.
Right, right,
So
right.
I try to point out the history of attacking this thing called black art, because for a while I did a show called Black is the Absence of Color in the dictionary. And that was a way of not allowing African-American artists to be mainstream. Well, you had your show in February. What's your problem?
Right.
I want a show in January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, all year. And see me as an artist. I was. So that work I started when Donald Trump started campaigning. And that was because I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. And that started when I was in New York at the Studio Museum in Harlem, the Central Park 5. Because of that paper, half-page spread, condemning those kids that were proven not guilty, that went to jail, he still didn't apologize, affected me, because cops could stop you and frisk you for no reason. I'm 5'6", I weigh 100 and nothing. Guess who they stopped all the time? And people don't think about that because it's not part of their agenda or part of their experience, but it's mine. And so anybody that was in New York that looked like me, and I can't tell you how many times I fit the profile, because it's not your experience, doesn't mean it's not happening. And so that's what this work was about. And we all know the black guy can't be the smartest guy in the room. Ask Obama. I want to do a painting. What if Obama said, and this is my political stuff. So, but I don't want to do that stuff anymore. But we planned this show, State of the Union, 3 months ago. And it's work that Toro Alonso had started years ago. This stuff is now 5-6 years. I got a piece in the show called The Beating of Rodney King. I painted that piece the day it happened. In my world, nothing's changed. Maybe it's getting worse, but I think, I always tell people, if you lie, you cheat, and you steal, that doesn't make you a good person. And if you're a religious person, if somebody's practicing the 7 deadly sins, maybe you're praying to the wrong God. So to me, it's a joke, but it's not a joke. But I have to joke about it because it's what I'm going through and experiencing it, turning and telling my story through the art which allows me a platform to show the world. My wife made me take this piece behind me out of the window. I said, why would you want me to do that? She said, because it makes me uncomfortable. So my answer to her was, does that make it a great piece of art because you're uncomfortable? I said, if it's making you uncomfortable, what about the other 99.9% of non-colored people on the block? You think they're uncomfortable too? I said, if everybody is complicit, you think anything's going to change? If you don't attack the problem, because you don't have any means to, as an artist, I do.
Wow. And I think art has always been political. I'm actually in London right now. I was just looking at the Rossettis at, I forget which museum, the pre-Raphaelites, and I never really thought about it before, but they were political as well. They were making social commentary, and it's a message that we don't necessarily see now in their work. So art has always been political. We love to look at art, James, and your work is so draws us in. We've got some questions about this piece, and that may be all we have time for. But Jen, we've got a couple of questions on this. Let's give them both to James, and let's go out looking and talking about this marvelous piece of art.
Okay, Mary said, wow, I have to see this painting in person. I agree, Mary. And Jean said, how long did it take to make this painting? The total of 9 months?
So that would be 2020. So in 2020, I was 70. So it took me 70 years to paint that.
Yeah.
Of that quality, of that freedom, of that expression, and that clarity. And so you don't put the time frame on how long. People associate that with, I call it nonsense. How long did that take you to paint? Well, you got to work years and years and years and years and years and years to paint something, I don't know, rapidly in a very few hours. Now that painting I worked on for several months, but I work in a way where I'm working on 10 pieces at a time. That's the first answer. So I don't answer that question. When anybody asks me that question about how long something took me, I give them my age.
Yeah, fair enough. James, we all want to see this. We hope you can bring it up to your gallery in Lambertville so we don't have to travel quite so far. Any chance of that?
Yes, it's coming down. I'm from the Fiddler Club, where I was an artist in resident here in Philadelphia for 2 years, along with 6 or 7 other pieces. And then I'm going to get it photographed for
Raritan Quarterly.
the Raritan Quarterly that's coming out, and they out of Rutgers, and they have selected me for their quarterly for the next year. So I'll have this piece and 3 other pieces for that. And so, yes, it will be coming to Lambertville. I also have a clothing line, I believe, with these images on it. And if I don't, I'm going to make a clothing line that you can buy online, and I'll have that in the window. So yeah, because I actually have tote bags and tights and shawls that you can wear of that painting, as well as, hello, wait a minute. You can go. You can buy
iPhone cover.
an iPhone cover on Redbubble. James Dupree on Redbubble.
Okay. That's fabulous, James. And I know you, in addition to your work, first of all, let us know when that piece is here. maybe we can put out on social media that it's time to go see that piece. And I know you have the work of Arturo Sandoval, who has been weaving microfiche, a really extraordinary work at your gallery in Lambertville. People can go see that. Thank you so much for joining us on Art Talk. We loved having you, and we'd love to talk to you some more. Do you show up in your gallery because people want to come talk to you some more?
Okay, I will be there this weekend. I'll be there Saturday and Sunday this week. Next weekend, they can come to Philadelphia and visit. I promise they won't get shot.
We love Philadelphia.
6 in Bainbridge is this Arturo Alonso and myself. Arturo will be here. He's flying back specifically for the show. And he will be here talking about his work. We'll have some live music and food and drink. I'll be in the gallery all day. So if they want to specifically talk to me about the political work here in Philadelphia, the gallery opens up at 1, and the reception's from 5 to 8. And because everybody in Philadelphia hasn't seen me, we'll be here all day and probably 11, 12, playing music and talking about art. There we are. That's Arturo Alonso Sandoval, taught 44 years at the University of Kentucky.
Fantastic. James, thank you so much for joining us on Phillips Mill Art Talk.
Thank you so much for having me. I really had a good time.
Oh, good. I'm glad. With me is Jen McHugh, our technical director. Thank you, Jen.
Glad to be here. This was fun.
Jean Mihich is our show producer. Mary Flamer is our guest producer. We thank you so much, Mary, for bringing James to us. And thanks all of you for joining us on Art Talk. Come back next month, Wednesday, May 24th, to talk with pastel artist Helena Van Emmerich Finn. For Phillips Mill Art Talk, I'm Laura Womack.